Hey, lovers, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, thanks so much for coming by. I appreciate it. We are in Facebook group, That's It, Let's Talk. So if you're not following our Facebook group, That's It, Let's Talk, please make sure that you do so, because we're going to be covering some of the hottest topics out there. Right now, we are talking about the very viral phone call that went down and went viral this weekend with the one and only gospel phenomenal Kirk Franklin, right? So it was unexpected only because of the nature of the phone call. So we're going to play the phone call and try to get some deep perspectives, so to speak, as to what happened, what unfolded, get a little bit of history. I'm going to talk about the history of this relationship. And we're also going to talk about the man, that is Kirk Franklin. We're going to talk about, is it a PR stunt? That is something that some people are believing. So we're going to talk about several things regarding it. This is the phone call that so many people are talking about on your timeline. We're going to play this viral call and then we're going to get right into it. So let's play the call and then we're going to have a conversation. Okay. So that's the call. That's pretty much all that I've heard from the call. Now listen, you guys. First of all, this really is starting to go a different direction because people are going with them. Man, quit acting like y'all never cursed out your children. You know what? If this was Joel Osteen and all the people that are defending Kirk Franklin, if this was Joel Osteen, y'all would slaughter this man. If Joel Osteen got on the phone with his oldest child and had a conversation and cursed him out to the fullest, y'all would go after him all the way. So stop trying to pretend like you don't understand why people are questioning why this happened, right? So let's not do that. That's first of all. So Kirk Franklin, being the gospel great that he is. Now listen, this is a long time person I followed for many years. For those of you who are new to all things that are D Shields, I grew up in the church, right? So Kirk Franklin was definitely one of the ones that I love his music. I love Smile. I love Stomp. The list could just go on and on and on. There are many songs that Kirk Franklin has brought to us. There's a demeanor about him that he's brought that is just unique to Kirk Franklin. And I personally have never seen him lose his cool. I have met Kirk Franklin in person, Nashville, Tennessee, at the Always Sisters Conference. Never saw the man lose his cool. I have attended the huge concert that was in Austin, Texas. Was there from the beginning when they were setting up all the way to the end, as I always am. Never seen the man lose his cool. So if you are a longtime follower of Kirk Franklin, then this probably is a little bit of a, whoa, what just happened here, right? So the position that he holds in the gospel realm of things, right? Some people are having a conversation and you're not even, you don't follow anything gospel, so you probably shouldn't even be in this conversation, right? But for people that follow that life, I am one of those who way before Kirk Franklin walked away from that life as the position that he held in that life, I walked away way before him, right? So I just don't do religion, I do spiritual, so I kind of see this on a different wavelength than most, right? So Kirk Franklin did say in 2018 that he is walking away from the Christian life as it is known. In my understanding of what Kirk Franklin said, November 2018, I think it was November 21st, 2018, if I'm correct on that date. What I understand from him is saying is, look, the Trinity gospel life, you guys are always questioning why I'm in nightclubs, why I'm in secular environments, why my music is on secular streaming with secular music. And a lot of people were questioning the way that he moves, the things that he does. So he said, you know what, let me back up from the Trinity gospel, right? So in his position of doing that 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, or whatever you want to say, in his position of doing that, justifiably so, he can cuss out his kid. You know what I'm saying? Like, Kirk can cuss out his child because he's not following under that particular rule in that particular realm, in that particular belief, right? So he can definitely curse out his child. Now, if Kirk Franklin, he can curse out his child anytime he wants to, gave him birth and probably pays his bills, but that's a whole different conversation. But in that particular faith, it is expected that one would not. So when you see the people that are in shock, they definitely feel like, hey, you're bringing us woe is me and Jesus for the type of music. So since you're doing that, why do we see you just going ham, talk about killing him and breaking his neck and everything else, right? So it kind of threw people for a loop. Probably those people who are sticklers of the book of Timothy. If you don't read the Bible, do you have no idea what I'm talking about? So if those people are sticklers of the book of Timothy, then they probably feel like, okay, wait a minute. In the book of Timothy, it says that a leader should not behave this way, right? So there are some people that are going to be really, really holding him on a pedestal to say, look, hold up, you should not be acting like this. And I can relate to on this sense, right? So I grew up in a non-denominational church, right? So I didn't do Baptist. I know over there, I'm not going to pick on anybody. I'm just saying the things that I see. And I'm talking about the belief from my own family perspective. That way no one gets offended, right? So growing up, we're non-denominational, but parts of my family are Baptist. In the denominational faith that and church that I grew up in, the rules were really, really strict. So that you cannot curse in the non-denominational faith, right? You cannot drink in the non-denominational faith. You cannot have a girlfriend and a side chick and a side dude in the non-denominational faith. The rules are extremely fire and brimstone. Billy Graham, being one of the leaders of that particular church that he ordained the minister of the church that I was in. So that particular faith, they are really, really strict on the things that you can and cannot do. Okay. So because of that, I watched in the non-denominational faith that I grew up in, people don't curse. And so when I was in that church, I did not do any cursing. That was not something that you would see happen. So there are a lot of people that follow the non-denominational faith. If they are sticklers to it on the level of the Billy Graham level, they're not cursing. Right. And then I left the church when I was 16, and then I kind of faded away and went back into it. When I went back into it, I searched for a non-denominational church. The first church that my husband, my soldier, had in the end was a Baptist church in Killeen, Texas. And I was one of those that sat in complete shock. We're going to get back to Kirk Franklin in just a minute. I was in shock because the pastor was sitting on the pulpit and he had a pack of cigarettes in his pocket. And I was like, oh, they do that devil shit here? Like, I didn't even know it could go down like that. And people were cursing. Like, afterwards they went out and they had drinks. It was happy hour. I was like, wow, this is like Lucifer's home too. So it was really different. You know what I'm saying? For someone like me who grew up in a faith where, hold up, none of that goes down. They don't drink, they don't smoke, they don't curse, they don't get out of line, they don't do anything that they deem Luciferish, right? So, you have to understand in this particular belief, when we're talking about gospel, it's so broad in Western religion life, right? So it's so broad, it gets confusing. But there are parts there. This is this man, Kirk Franklin, who his music is in every inch of it, right? So you have let's stomp, stomp, let's stomp. Like the white face, they're listening to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, all jokes aside. But no, the white faith are listening to it, the Latina faith, the Korean faith, the black faith. Everyone's listening to Kirk Franklin's music. But all of those religions, they all move to a different beat. They all have different rules. So there are some people that listen to his music in those more strict gospel parts where they are like, he did what? And they do want to cancel Kirk Franklin because in their particular faith, you don't curse. You're not going to curse anyone out. You may know someone like that, right? I say this. If you listen to my podcast that I did about things my mother never did, that my mother raised me in a non-denominational church. My mother came from the Baptist faith, but my father and my mother raised me in the non-denominational church. So I am 47 years old and I have never heard my mother curse. Right? And to do so around her, you tried to no, I'm joking, but no, just like literally, that's just something that you just don't do because everyone understands this about my mom, that she doesn't curse, right? So this, and she has many friends in that particular faith and they do not curse, right? So there are just some people that are strict, that are really strict in the belief system of the Christian faith, the Trinity gospel, that they do not believe that anyone should behave in that way. And they already wanted to cancel Kirk Franklin. This just kind of put the icing on the cake. So let's go back to that. Why is it that they wanted to cancel him before? All right. So let's do a little Kirk history real quick. Can we do that? Let's see if I can do that without losing sound. Okay, good. So we're still here. So back in 1996, Kirk Franklin married his longtime friend Tammy. So he married her in 1996 and they had a child from previous relationships. Kirk had this son that you hear him cursing out in this viral video this weekend. Kirk had his son Kerryon. That son was born in 1988 and then they had another daughter and the family continues on and he's married to Tammy. But don't you guys, forget that in this relationship, cursing out his son is not the only thing that's happened. On a viral stage, which was Oprah Winfrey's stage, we ended up hearing about Kirk Franklin and his porn addiction. Right? So when that came out, the church was rocking. The church was rocking, especially in Western religion. Western religion was all over the place. And then he started doing the secular thing. And his music was on secular stations. And the church was really divided on all things that are Kirk Franklin, right? So they were trying to decide, okay, he's providing us this praise and worship. His praise and worship is being used on every pulpit, in every church almost. His praise and worship, some form of another, is being used. But is this really the person that we want to have in this particular faith, representing this faith? Because what is his life like outside of the music? And so that division on who Kirk Franklin was started many years ago, especially after the porn addiction incident that happened when him and Tammy went to Oprah Winfrey show, right? So there's a lot of history behind this particular individual, right? So I personally, I'm going to tell you something that's coming from a whole different side. I pushed religion out the way. When they told me what was going on and they said that this video had went viral about Kirk Franklin, I was like, here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. And you guys don't understand why. Many years ago, I watched the funniest thing that went down. And it was Michael Jackson and R. Kelly and Kirk Franklin, and they were I think they were like in a car. I can't remember. And it was someone doing an interview. And Michael was laughing and he was just cracking up and he was having a good time. And the conversation went on about, the musical geniuses that these guys are and the friendship that these guys had. And what I'm noticing about the fun moment, the close moment, the musical geniuses and the connection that they had is that they have managed, I'm just going to say they, because I don't know who they is. But they have managed to successfully take down that trio. Right? Like destroyed these are musical geniuses that provided for these music labels the best that you can come up with in gospel, the best that you can come up with in R&B, the best that you can come up with in pop. These are the top in it, the top pop, the top R&B, the top gospel, right? Is there a need to slam the character of these individuals before those persons pass away so that who they were, the history of it begins to get watered down. Because these are musical geniuses. And I know people say, well, what does it have to do with anything on this Kirk Franklin cursing? Look, I just feel like, is it ironic that the best friends are all found this ugly attacks happen to them? Michael Jackson, R. Kelly, and Kirk Franklin. Just odd. Just very, very odd to me. I also believe, if I have this correct, that's why it'll be opinion until you guys go back and research it, because I've been trying to find where I saw that at. But there was something that R. Kelly and Kirk Franklin had in common, and it was that while they were younger, some type of leadership that in the Christian leadership or the religious leadership molested or messed with or did something with those particular two. That's something that they had in common as well, right? So just go verify, because you guys will hold me down to my word, and I don't want you to do that. But that, I remember that being a story that I heard, and that was what made me see the friendship of those guys. Like, oh, I really see it. Like these guys had went through this thing in their life, and then they threw themselves into the music, and they became the musical geniuses that are Michael Jackson, R. Kelly, and Kirk Franklin, right? And so there's just that, right? But the part that I wanted to talk about is, of course, the religion. Why are some people saying that he shouldn't have cursed out his son? It's the belief mindset, depending on where you sit in the Christian belief, right? So depending on what church you sit in. Every city that I move to, or every city that I visit, the first thing that I always do is look up their newspaper, the Sunday morning paper, to see how many churches are in the area that I'm in. Now, I no longer go to church. That's been since 2007. And the only time you'll find me sitting in the church-like environment is if I go and visit, which I like to do at least once or twice a year, Joel Osteen, right? It's about the only time you'll see me sitting in anything that's a church environment, or, being from the black culture. Half the time the funerals and weddings are there. But you really won't find me doing much in the belief set for many reasons. I grew up in the church. I was a baby from birth in the church, in a non-denominational church. I went to college. Christian ministry was my minor. I went to a Christian college, so this is not, I've been in the faith long enough to be able to have a voice in it, right? So, but there's a lot of division regarding how to behave. I will say, when I was in the Christian faith, and when I claimed myself to be a Christian, when I declared that to the world to be a Christian, I didn't curse either. I didn't allow my children to have secular music in the house. I kind of had started doing the same thing that I grew up with. No secular music, no cursing, no televisions were allowed. I was really, there for a moment when I revisited the church in my early 30s. And then I just kind of put it all behind me, right? Because there's so much division. But anyway, I was telling you guys the story about how when I go to every city, I will actually pick up the paper to see how many churches are in the area. And I always see like 400, right? And then I'll look up the population of the area, and it'll be like super low. And I'm like, drive me around, show me the churches. And it'll be like little storefronts, or, one of the churches you'll pull up and it'll be someone's garage. And, like, why are there so many different churches? Why can't all of you get along in that faith? That is the question of the day. Why is it that people in religion cannot get along? What is the problem? Let me do this right here. I'm sorry, you guys. Let me make sure that I go over here and make this private. So what are your thoughts so far? Feel free to come in. And if you take a look, I have the link available where you can join in the conversation. I'm asking some really key questions here. So if you have any religious answers, I'm okay with hearing them. And I'm okay with us. Let's try it. Oh, it's going to be public anyway. I don't have to worry about that. All right. So I'm okay with trying to answer those questions for us to get some answers to the questions, right? So, there was a point, like I said, when it comes to Kirk Franklin that, this is not anything new for people to be questioning what exactly is happening with him in regards to where he stands. Now, I don't remember the entire breakdown, but I do remember him stepping back and saying, look, I'm stepping back from the expectations of the Christian faith. Paraphrase. And he said that in 2018. So with him putting that disclaimer out, maybe he knew he was going to have to cuss out his kid. Or at the beginning of the phone call, if you listen to the audio, rewind it. I'm not sure if it's really clear on here. I'm playing something from it that I found on YouTube. But if you go to the beginning, it sounds like the son Carry-On is saying, I'm going to tell this about you. And then Kirk goes into, oh, you do, if you do. And then he's like, da-da-da-da-da. And the next thing you know, if you do that, I'm going to break your neck. So is there something that, came out? And did that particular thing possibly come out in 2018 and it was going to be huge and he knew that it would impact his life in the gospel realm? Is that the reason why he stepped back from the Christian faith strictness of it all? Anyway, sounds like he continued on music wise. Sounds like he continued on with doing gospel music, but he definitely in the last 2 years has made it clear, I kind of moved to a different beat. And that's my curiosity. Why is it in that particular belief, the Trinity gospel, why? And for those who, and they're going to be atheists on here, right? I forgot about that. There's so many people that don't even know that belief. Trinity gospel, you could do your research, of course, is God the Father, the Holy Spirit. Okay, so in that particular belief, it's just so many churches, so many faiths, so many different ways of doing things. Like when I'm going to talk to people that go to church right now, right? My church that I grew up in, we could not wear pants. I see people that go to church and they wear pants, and I'm like, wow, I remember the church that I grew up in, we couldn't wear pants. We couldn't wear makeup. We couldn't wear earrings. We could not, if we went to Six Flags, we would get in trouble because the devil was at Six Flags. We couldn't go swimming when other kids swim in the pool because we would get the spirit of the devil. So we would have our own little blocked off swimming area because we couldn't swim with the devil's kids. And it was even so bad that my home was divided because my sisters were in the sinners kids class and I was in the saved kids class. And there were sinner kids in our church and saved kids in our church. There were sinner spouses in our church. If you were not of the same faith, if you hadn't gone up to the pulpit and given your life to Christ and been baptized, you were a sinner. Now, the only thing that the church did not allow was, that's sitting inside the church. And you could be a sinner in the church, but if you were a reprobate, you couldn't come back to the church at all. So that was strict. So I would, if I was still in that faith and heard that Kirk Franklin and I'm playing his music and worshiping to his music, and I heard that he cursed out his son, I'd be a little thrown. So there's some parts of the Christian faith that are really strict that, yeah, they're like, no, Kirk Franklin can't cuss out his son. He needs to step down. Right? They said that when Juanita Bynum, didn't she just like knock the fuck out her husband or something? Like they had like a whole fist fight. You know what I'm saying? So they were like, oh, hold on. And I think she stepped down for like 2 hours and went back to preach the next day. But yes, there are some people, Paula White, that trashy trash. She leads, and there were some things that she did during the disclaimer, that's my opinion, not the opinion of the listeners. But there are so many people that didn't like her, the things that she did with Donald Trump. And the Christian church was, the church was divided, and some people felt she could stay and some people felt that she couldn't. It was a lot that went on there too. So cursing your child out is not a norm, even though in the black culture, we want to say, I can put my religion to the side so I can cuss them out. I mean, you can, but you're not right. Like, you need to start all the way over at the faith of a babe. If you do, like, you can't just curse somebody out and go back to it an hour later. Like, you can't curse somebody out and Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, your way back to norm. Like, you're going to have to start the journey all the way over. You know what I'm saying? You can't just curse out your child and go back to praises him. You can't do that. That's just not the way that the faith. I'm talking from a Christian ministry student level. Like, that's not the way that the faith is. So if you have this kind of thing happen, the expectation is not for Kirk Franklin to go to his Instagram and say that I know that you guys heard this call and I'm sorry, and he cut off the part where I took him to counseling and all these other, legal disclaimers that were said in that viral Instagram response from Kirk Franklin. But no, in that particular faith, they expect you to step down of some sort. The jealous people, maybe they're behind your son doing this, and maybe they're working with your son to take you down. I don't know. This seems to me like somebody is coming for the legacy that is Kirk Franklin. Now, a child gets cursed out. A 33, right? Child gets cursed out by their parent. I'm not really sure if your child is in their 30s, if your child's in their 30s, I don't really see anything that your child can do that should get you to that point, right? Because you have more than matured at this point, surely. So you have grown up enough. And if your child is pressing your buttons like that, the only thing that I can think of that you guys could be going through is some kind of financial crisis, either on the end of the child or on the end of the parent. And, yes, you could say, well, after I stabbed him and after I cussed him and I broke his neck, one thing that I made sure that I did was we went to therapy. See, here's the thing. Here's when therapy's not working, is when you did that after the fact. Okay, so if you have to go to therapy after the, attack, then it's probably not working, and one should switch therapists. So it's not working at that point. So your parenting should not get to the point when they get in their late 20s. Heck, when they get in their 20s on up, you shouldn't be that bothered. You should not be that bothered. You should move back. Let them do whatever it is that they're going to do. Tell them to keep a distance when they're being disrespectful. It's so hard for me not to be tone deaf or be received as tone deaf, because the way that I raise my children tends to be so different from other people, right? So when I say certain things a certain way, people tell me that, well, D, you had it good, or D, you didn't have financial problems while raising them, D. And all those are just opinions and thoughts and whatever. So it's not about that. It's not about the finances being okay while raising them, because there were points when they were younger that I got frustrated, because my finances weren't in that order at that time. Once they were older, yes, true. But there's still levels of respect that had to happen in my home. But a child, I don't have to say the way that this thing went with Kirk Franklin and his son. So his son is saying something disrespectful, and then Kirk Franklin bounces back with, nigga, I'll do this and this and that. Listen, the baby is not going to get the disrespect out their mouth if I'm the parent. Right? So you can get upset, like my children, if one of them happens to get upset, right? If my daughter that's the hot and fire spitting one, right? So the oldest one. So if she says something and she gets out of line, or she's frustrated about something, it doesn't have anything to do with me. She'll just call and, Mom, can you do this? And I don't give her the answer that she wants. And then she gets upset. The other two will immediately be like, no, just hold up. Get off the phone with Mom, and we'll deal with that in a minute. Don't do that in front of Mom. And so they will tell her, and they will let her know, right? So it's a level of respect that you have to have. If you do what you're supposed to do, your child is not going to get on anybody's phone. AT&T, T-Mobile, or Singular. I don't care what service they're on. They're not going to get on it and curse you out if you're doing it how it's supposed to be done. I can't tell it all to you. Only thing that I could tell you, and I know you're like, D, you always trying to promote your business. No, boo, I'm just telling you that y'all stuff is so toxic, I can't give it to you for free. You're going to have to do a session with me. Like, I'm going to have to charge you for those sessions, because I'll charge Kirk Franklin. Like, you should not be at any point where your child's cursing you out. It just shouldn't happen. Your child can get upset. Your child can get frustrated. Your child can voice that, Mom, I don't appreciate that you do this. I did this. Mom, I don't like. They could do that. But cussing you out and calling you out your name, you need a session with D. I'm sorry. I just moved different. Frustration, I allow it. Growing up, people would tell me with my children, why do you allow them to express themselves? Because they can. And then if they wanted to curse, you're not going to curse in my environment. I was not allowed to curse in my parents' environment. So you're not going to curse in my environment. But I'm never going to tell you not to curse. You can go upstairs to your apartment. That's what we call their bedrooms. You could go upstairs to your apartment, get in the closet, and curse the hell out that floor and that pillow. Put a pillow in front of you and curse it out. If I hear it, I'm taking the life that I so freely gave. You know what I'm saying? So knowing that, when they know that that's my rule, no one ever tried me. Right? But I didn't wait for them to get mad to tell them that this is how these things shall go. I talk to my children. This is how when I go, I see you guys get a little hot in the pants over there. So here's some things that's about to happen now that you entered middle school. You're not going to talk back. You're not going to break my rules. You're not going to do this in my house. You're not going to talk to me this way. And then I have those little family meetings all the time to remind people what they're not going to do with me. So if you have these constant reminders, you'll never end up with this phone call of disrespect. I'm in a relationship where my fiance kind of had a situation like that happen with the child. And I'm like, is that child cursing you out? He's quick to say, oh, hold up. No, don't say anything. No, I'm about to raise him, his mama, grandma, and dig that bitch up from the grave that raised them. Like, I have a whole bunch of problems with people that have children disrespecting adults. But I digress. So, Kirk Franklin and this child cursing him out, I say something was missed. So, I don't care, Kirk, that you called the therapist after the call. That therapist should have been doing their job to the point where that shouldn't have even happened. And if the therapist can't get it done, then the problem lies within you. So, yes, you do need to step back from all this stomping and smiling and praising Jesus and get your home in order. Get your house in order. Like, you need to take a step back. That's the way that I look at it. Like, if a teacher flips out like that, the teacher needs to take time off. If a principal of a school flips out like that, the principal needs to take time off. If you have police officers in uniform flipping out, they need to take time off. Take time, reflect, get it together, because that's not how it's done when you're in the position elder and you're the parent, or you're somehow influencing that younger person. You cannot lose your cool. And when you feel like you are, you need to pull back and do it a different way. So if you carry yourself a certain way, the disrespect's not going to happen. Because I saw a lot of people, I curse my kids out when they curse me out. And I'm just lost at the when they curse me out. I'm about to come slap your kid, and that's not even my child. No, they should not be cursing you out. Any child that doesn't like that, come talk to me. Come talk to me. Yes, I have a problem if you're cursing out your parent. You don't like it, we'll talk. Right? So, was I going to say anything else about Kirk? Right. So, yeah. So, the phone call, like I said, just, I felt like some kind of damage control was needed. It was already out of control. Just hearing the part that was released, I could tell that relationship with the father and son is way out of control. And the father has definitely lost control and needs to pull back. As far as the church, I'm not shocked that half the church feels that he's out of line. And I broke that down for you guys. And then, of course, my way of parenting, pay for them little relationship coaching sessions with me, and I'll break that down as to how these things don't happen to me, because I'm not doing it. I need like real explanations. Mom, tomorrow I'm going to call you and I'm cussing you out. Okay, my child going to have to spend 12 hours on the phone with me breaking down why they feel like they're going to get away with cursing me out and live. Right? Like, so how do you think you're going to get from the beginning of this phone call to the end? You need to convince me how you going to curse me out, and I'm not going to try to take your soul. Right? So, jokes aside with death, but take your soul. So, that's it. I don't have anything more on that. Hopefully that helped somebody. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I do not, because you guys don't receive it well most of the time. But that's all that I have to say on Kirk Franklin. All right, you guys, I'm out. What did you roll your eyes for? You did earlier. I think I brought when I brought up the child. Did I say son? No, I didn't say son. I just said child, right?
I didn't roll my eyes at all. I'm sitting here thinking, what are you talking about?
My thing went out completely.